I want to talk about John Cena. So let's talk about John Cena and current plans for John Cena's WWE return. Every Monday, we do the rumour look back by looking at the big rumours from 6 months ago and seeing what, if anything, was proven true. This week, Fightful and the Wrestling Observer have had rather an enjoyable disagreement that's guaranteed to put one or both of them in the negative in that rumour look back in 6 months' time. One or both will definitely have got this one wrong. For the last month or so, the rumour mill has very clearly stated that the main event of this year's SummerSlam is going to be Roman Reigns defending the Universal Championship against John Cena. Andrew Zarian of the Wrestling Observer has been the strongest and loudest voice stating this. He was the first to state it, and he has kept strong since. He's also, as an aside, been reporting pretty much the same things about Brock Lesnar that I was reporting this time last year. It's usually the tactic. It's very brave of him to be so open with that information, considering what happened to me. A couple of days ago, Fightful reported that Cena would be filming a movie instead, meaning that he would be unavailable to main event SummerSlam or wrestle at the event at all. Naturally, a lot of news outlets covered this, stating that it was huge news and that Cena had been dropped unceremoniously from SummerSlam by the WWE. Those outlets were made to look rather ridiculous shortly afterwards when they also reported that Cena wouldn't be filming and would still be wrestling at SummerSlam. Why? Because the Wrestling Observer, who as I've just mentioned are the original source of this match, reiterated what they had already reported and said, yeah, the plan hasn't changed. So, Andrew Zarian said, the plan is Roman Reigns versus John Cena. Wrestling news websites all went, the plan is John Cena versus Roman Reigns. Then they went, no, it's definitely not, because one source said otherwise. Then they went, no, it definitely is, because the same source from the first thing has said it is. So the second source was enough, Fightful, were enough for them to change their minds, but no new information, they changed their minds back again. Baffling. There are several things of note here. Firstly, I always find it interesting how these news sites intentionally share opposing news without posting retractions or actually saying what's true and what's false. Nowadays, news sites aren't expected to share the truth, just whatever rumour is out there, so be aware of that when you are consuming your wrestling information. Secondly, this is the first of what will unquestionably be many occasions in the future in which high-profile journalists have disagreed. We have a new one involved now, but ultimately, big disagreements between wrestling journalists are a dime a dozen. They happen all the time. It's just whether or not people are grown up enough to move on and communicate afterwards, or if they decide to resort to childish name-calling and the whole gossip columnist thing continues. Usually what happens here is that both men, instead of getting together and sharing their information, will double down, and the more popular one will be considered to have won. When SummerSlam does come and John Cena either wrestles or doesn't, remember who said what. The report that Cena won't wrestle is a strange one. I'm going to be completely honest, it's a strange report. I can't be alone in thinking that Vegas and Hollywood aren't actually that far apart. It wouldn't be difficult to Cena to do both, especially considering he could always ask for a day off. He could always say, oh, it's a weekend, can I have a weekend off? I don't know. I just feel like what we got was only a tiny piece of a report. But maybe there's about to be more behind a paywall. Who can tell? If Cena doesn't make it to SummerSlam, who actually is there left for Roman to face? And this is a question for you guys in the chat as well. If Cena can't make it, who do you line Roman Reigns up against? At this point, it's either Seth versus Edge becomes Roman versus Seth versus Edge, or, more likely, Kevin Owens gets another crack at the whip. Do you want to see Cena versus Roman? And, if that doesn't happen, whom would you prefer to see get the nod? Dylan says, if that production is still running protocols, they won't let Cena go into an arena packed full of people. It depends. After all, the WWE require proof of vaccination in order to attend SummerSlam. Maybe the reason they are asking for proof of vaccination is so that they can say to the production company, well, John Cena's walking into an atmosphere where everyone is already vaccinated. And we are taking these precautions for Roman Reigns. Maybe that is part of this. Moxie has suggested Seth Rollins. Seth, to our knowledge, is already wrestling Edge, but we'll wait and see on that one. They could always change that, much like Bianca Belair. Her opponent may be changed. Michael would like to see KO, and that's absolutely fair. Matt says, can Hollywood afford Cena getting injured in the match should that happen? Because it happened with The Rock and they were not happy. A lot of moving parts. We've talked about this a little bit on Discord. A lot of moving parts here. It's not entirely down to whoever the movie production company is. But it depends. Is the film that he's recording one that requires him to engage in a lot of physical activity? Because if not, maybe he could be injured and still perform. Maybe he's able to convince them that, yeah, that was a really freak accident. Maybe John Cena is fitter than The Rock was. Lots of possibilities. Jake Wick says, I want to see Roman Cena, because that's a money draw match. Dylan says, I think the only way Cena goes into SummerSlam and does the movie is if the movie is starting filming after SummerSlam, which has been reported by others. A very clear point there. Yeah, so it's what I mean when I say I feel like I've got a bit of a story. It's like a bit of a story. It has been reported that the filming will start afterwards. So I don't understand the issue. Jacob says, sorry I missed the first part of this report. What's the reason Cena is not going to be at SummerSlam? Cena is going to be at SummerSlam. I've had that independently verified. Fightful reported that he was going to be filming a movie instead. And then later on, Wrestling Observer, who'd been the one reporting that he was going to be wrestling, said that, yeah, he's still going to be wrestling. In this instance, I'm choosing to trust the Wrestling Observer and Andrew Zarian. It's a spy movie which will include physical stuff. Okay, cool. Michael says the movie studio doesn't have some kind of insurance policy. I thought I saw once about how Rock couldn't wrestle a match because of an insurance policy. It may be the case that Cena has signed a contract preventing him from wrestling. It may also not be. That's the thing. We genuinely don't know. Moxie, the news does not say that. I'm going to be very clear here. One source, the Wrestling Observer, says that the WWE hope that The Rock can be at Survivor Series. I want to be very clear on the differentiation there. The Wrestling Observer have reported that the WWE hope that The Rock will be at Survivor Series. I just want to be very clear. I don't want to misquote anyone. This, by the way, Moxie, is why I usually ask for sources.